The first crack in our family's perfect picture came with a laugh and a box of fun gifts. It was the kind of summer day that makes you believe nothing bad could ever happen. Sunlight pouring through the trees, the smell of barbecue in the air, cousins running barefoot on the grass. Our family reunion was always a big deal, but this year my sister had gone all out. She'd rented a lakeside cabin, decorated the tables with wildflowers, and even made matching t-shirts for everyone. But the real surprise came after dinner, when she stood up and clinked her glass. "I have something for everyone," she announced, grinning as she handed out small, brightly wrapped boxes. "Open them together." Inside each box was a DNA test kit. "It's just for fun," she said, waving off the groans and jokes. "Let's see who's got Viking blood. Or if we're really as Irish as Grandma claims." We laughed, teased each other, and after a little coaxing, everyone agreed to do the swabs right there at the table. Even Dad, who usually hated gimmicks, played along, rolling his eyes but smiling as he sealed his sample. No one thought twice about it. Not then. 3 weeks later, everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning when my phone rang. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee, scrolling through emails when Dad's name flashed on the screen. I answered, expecting a quick hello. Instead, his voice exploded through the speaker, raw and panicked. "What did you do?" he shouted. "What did you do?" I froze. "Dad, what are you talking about?" He was breathing hard, like he'd been running. "The test. The DNA test. Why did you make us do that?" I tried to keep my voice calm. "I didn't make anyone do anything. It was just for fun." "What's going on?" There was a long, ragged silence. Then quietly he said, "Someone at that table isn't who they say they are." And he hung up. I stared at my phone, heart pounding. Before I could process what had just happened, it rang again. This time, it was Mom. Her voice was shaky, thick with tears. "Your father's upset," she whispered. He's not himself. Something's happened." I pressed her for details. But she just kept repeating, I don't know. Then she started to cry, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I barely had time to breathe. Before the phone rang a third time, Grandma. Her voice was steady, almost relieved. "Finally," she said. "I've been waiting 30 years for this call." That's when I knew. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than a silly family game. Before I go on, please like and subscribe the channel, and also tell me in the comments from where you watch this video. Now come back to the story Thikana Asa Adkarnaha. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, whispered conversations, and unanswered questions. Dad stopped answering my texts. Mom wouldn't leave the house. My sister, who'd started the whole thing, was suddenly silent in the family group chat. Even Grandma, who usually called every day, kept her distance. But the real storm hit when the DNA results arrived. It started with a message from the testing company. "Your results are ready." I clicked the link, expecting to see a pie chart of ancestry, percentages, and maybe a few distant cousins. Instead, there was a new tab. Close matches. At the top of the list was a name I didn't recognize, someone with a 50% DNA match. The label read, half-sibling. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. I only had one sibling, my sister. Who was this person? I called her immediately. "Did you see your results?" She sounded shaken. "Yeah, I have a half-brother, but I don't know who he is." We compared notes. The same name had appeared on both our accounts. A man named Lucas, age 28. Location, 2 states away. I called Mom. She answered on the first ring, her voice raw. "Don't ask me," she said. "Ask your father." But Dad wasn't talking. He'd locked himself in his study, refusing to answer the door or the phone. The only time I saw him was late at night, pacing the backyard, his face pale in the moonlight. Days passed. The family group chat was silent. At work, I found myself staring at my phone, waiting for something, anything, to make sense of what was happening. Then one evening, my sister sent me a screenshot. It was a message from Lucas. "Hi, I think we're related. I just got my DNA results. I'm not looking for anything, but I'd like to know the truth." I stared at his photo. He looked nothing like us. Dark hair, sharp jaw, eyes that seemed to hold 1,000 questions. I sent him a message. I don't know what's going on, but I want to find out too. We agreed to talk the next day. That night, I lay awake, replaying every memory I had of my childhood. Was there ever a hint, a secret? A moment when Dad seemed distant or Mom looked away too quickly? I couldn't remember anything. Our family had always seemed so normal, boring even. But now it felt like everything I knew was built on sand. The next morning, Lucas called. His voice was calm, but I could hear the nerves underneath. "I don't want to cause trouble," he said. "But I've always wondered." My mom never talked about my dad. She said he was gone before I was born, but now, "Your dad's name came up in my results. I just want to know if it's true." I promised to help him find answers. But first, I needed to talk to Dad. I drove to my parents' house that afternoon, my mind spinning with questions. The neighborhood looked the same as always. Kids riding bikes, sprinklers hissing on green lawns, the distant sound of a lawnmower. But our house felt different. The curtains were drawn, the porch light on even though it was still daylight. I knocked, and after a long pause, Mom opened the door. Her eyes were red, her face drawn. "Is Dad here?" I asked. She nodded, stepping aside. "He's in the study. He hasn't come out all day." I walked down the hallway, my footsteps muffled by the old carpet. The door to Dad's study was closed. I knocked softly. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. "Dad, it's me. Please open the door." After a moment, I heard the lock click. The door opened a crack and Dad's face appeared, older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. "We need to talk," I said. He let me in without a word. The study was dark, the only light coming from a desk lamp. Papers were scattered everywhere. Old photos, letters, the DNA test kit box. Dad sat down heavily in his chair, rubbing his temples. I took a deep breath. "Who is Lucas?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at a photo on his desk, one of our family at the beach. Years ago, finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's my son." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I sat down, my heart pounding. "Why didn't you ever tell us?" Dad looked at me, his eyes shining with tears. "I was young. It was before I met your mother. I didn't even know about him until after he was born. His mother and I, we weren't together." She moved away. I tried to reach out, but she didn't want me involved. "I thought it was for the best. I thought I could just move on." I tried to process what he was saying. "Did Mom know?" He nodded. "I told her before we got married. She said it was in the past. But I always wondered if I'd made the right choice." I thought about Lucas, growing up without a father, wondering who he was. I thought about my own childhood, all the times Dad had been there, at every game, every recital, every birthday. I wondered if he'd ever thought about the son he'd left behind. "Why didn't you ever try to find him?" I asked. Dad shook his head. "I was afraid. Afraid of what it would mean for our family. Afraid of what you'd think of me." I wanted to be angry, but all I felt was sadness. "He's not angry, Dad. He just wants to know the truth." Dad covered his face with his hands. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, I stood up. He reached out. "He wants to meet you." Dad looked up, fear and hope warring in his eyes. "Do you think he'll forgive me?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "But you owe him the chance to try." I left the study and found Mom in the kitchen, staring out the window. She turned when she heard me, her face crumpling. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have told you. I just wanted to protect you." I hugged her, feeling the weight of secrets pressing down on both of us. That night I called Lucas. I told him what Dad had said, how sorry he was, how much he wanted to meet. Lucas was quiet for a long time. "I don't know what I want," he admitted, "but I want to see him. Just once." We arranged to meet at a park halfway between our towns. The day of the meeting, I drove Dad there, his hands shaking the whole way. We sat on a bench watching families play in the sunshine. After a few minutes, Lucas arrived. He looked nervous but determined. Dad stood up, his voice trembling. "Lucas?" Lucas nodded. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Dad reached out and Lucas took his hand. They talked for hours about the past, about regrets, about the years they'd lost. I watched from a distance, feeling a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Afterward, Lucas and I sat together on the swings, watching the sun set. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for helping me find him." I smiled. "I'm glad you did." When I got home, Grandma called. Her voice was calm, almost triumphant. "I told you, didn't I?" she said. "Secrets never stay buried forever." I laughed, the tension finally breaking. "You knew?" She chuckled. "I always knew. I just waited for the truth to come out." That night, our family group chat lit up for the first time in weeks. My sister sent a photo of the reunion t-shirts, captioned, "Guess we need to order one more." We all laughed, the sound of it healing something I hadn't realized was broken. But as I lay in bed, I couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets were still hiding in the shadows of our family tree? The days after Lucas met Dad felt like a strange new chapter for our family. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting or slammed doors, just a quiet, cautious hope. Dad called Lucas every evening, sometimes just to talk about the weather or a football game, sometimes to apologize again for all the years lost. Mom sent Lucas photos from old family albums, little glimpses of the life he'd missed but was now, in some way, a part of. My sister and I talked late into the night, piecing together memories with new understanding. "Do you think there are more secrets?" she asked once, her voice small in the dark. I shrugged, unsure. "Maybe, but I think we're strong enough to handle them now." Grandma, for her part, seemed lighter than she had in years. She called Lucas her bonus grandson and insisted he come to Sunday dinner. The first time he did, he brought a bouquet of wildflowers for her and a nervous smile for the rest of us. We sat around the table, passing dishes and stories, laughter slowly replacing the awkwardness. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One evening, as the sun set and the house grew quiet, Dad pulled me aside. He looked older, but also somehow younger, as if a weight had been lifted. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick, "for not hating me, for helping me find him." I hugged him, feeling the years of confusion and hurt finally start to fade. "We all make mistakes, Dad. What matters is what we do next." Lucas became a regular part of our lives. He came to birthdays, holidays, even joined our family's fantasy football league. There were still moments of awkwardness, old wounds that took time to heal, questions that didn't have easy answers, but we faced them together. The DNA kits, meant as a joke, had changed everything. They'd forced us to confront the truth, to have conversations we'd avoided for decades. And in the end, they'd given us something we never expected, a bigger, messier but more honest family. 3 weeks after the reunion, I got a message from Lucas. It was a photo of him and Dad fishing at the lake where our family always held reunions. They were both smiling, the kind of smile that comes from letting go of the past. "Thank you for giving me a family," he wrote. I stared at the photo for a long time, tears prickling my eyes. I thought about how easily things could have gone. Differently. How secrets could have stayed buried. How anger could have won. But we'd chosen to face the truth, to let it change us, to let it bring us together. If you've watched this far, thank you for staying with me through this story. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if your family ever faces a truth that feels too big to handle, remember, sometimes the things that break us open are the very things that let the light in. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the reunion, the DNA kits, the phone calls, and the way our family had changed. I realized that family isn't just about blood or secrets or even forgiveness. It's about showing up, again and again, even when it's hard. It's about choosing each other, every single day. And as I drifted off to sleep, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time, everything was true,